Hello everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney. I want to go over stuff that has happened over at the, I think it was like some sort of special event, like some sort of Comic-Con or something like that in Saudi Arabia, where the director Hamaguchi and I believe the producer of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Kitase, were there to discuss many different things about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the eventual part 3 of the remake project. And there are a few things we can go over, a few things we can discuss. I'm very curious about several different things, but I think a lot that they talked about is something that I am actually really excited for. I really am excited for a lot of things that they mentioned, such as the Highwind, such as Tifa's role, and many other things, especially how they discuss what their approach was for the ending of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, just know that I will be talking about the ending, so spoilers ahead, as well as anyone who has not played the OG, because there will also be spoilers in regards to that as well. So the first thing I guess we can discuss is that they talked a lot about Tifa's role in Part 3. Now, if you have followed me on this channel, you know that I've talked like several times about the live stream sequence that will occur in Part 3. It is one of my favorite sequences. I love it very dearly. It's possibly one of my favorite sequences from any video game of all time, because it's such an emotional sequence that provides so much character depth and just how it all works its way to essentially healing Cloud. And it's such a fascinating way to essentially get this person who has this really bad case of an identity crisis, who has gone through so much trauma, who he couldn't save Aerith, who has so much trouble dealing with loss, to heal him by allowing someone someone like Tifa, right, to connect the dots, to connect it all. And it goes through like their relationship and how both of them, think about each other, and through that bond, through all of this, through their memories, connect and finally bring back the main character, the hero of the story, to eventually resolve what is happening with Sephiroth, Genova, and everything else. And them talking about how much Tifa is essentially going to have a much more prominent role is fantastic to hear, because it should, because Tifa's biggest things that she does is essentially going to be in Part 3. One of the things, I believe Kitase is the one who mentioned this, Kitase, or maybe it was Nomura, the director, I think at some point mentioned it, where or maybe it was Hamaguchi, you know what, I'm just gonna say they all said it, but because they're all working on the same thing anyway, so it's like they all said it, right? But they talked about how like Rebirth is essentially Tifa is going through a phase where just everything just goes wrong. She's losing Cloud, she lost Aerith, everything is just shattering in front of her, and there's nothing she can do to help. Like, you see it at the end of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where she looks at Cloud and worries about him because he's not acting the proper way, and it makes her worried. Like, everything is just shattering for her, and it will continue shortly in Part 3, because there's a lot of stuff that happens in Part 3, such as the North Crater and the escape from Junon, that just continuously just brings her down to such a low level where it frankly, with everything else that she has gone through, and you could definitely read that in Trace of Two Paths. Again, it's a tremendous book, definitely recommend reading it. And it's just, oh my goodness gracious, all of everything that has happened to her, and to get to the point where she finally finds a way to help not only Cloud but the planet, everyone else, is just so perfect. That's why I love Tifa so much, because the way her arc is, her character, all the stuff that she has gone through is just showcases just how strong Tifa as a character is. Not just through her fighting ability, but internally, her mental state, everything that she had to go through, everything that she suffered through, and trying to find any sort of way to help the people close to her. And then finally she's able to do it. It's just such tremendous writing. And it's why she's one of my favorite characters of all time in any work of fiction. I love Tifa's character writing so much. There's so much depth to her that it's insane that there are a lot of people out there who really care much except just based on her looks and try to insult her that way or try to slander her that way. It's so baffling because there's so much depth to her. I'm not saying there's not depth to other characters, because there is. Each character is written differently. Each character has their own issues that they resolve, and each one of them are written really well, right? But it's like, for me, Tifa, just her writing is just so much more tremendous, and it doesn't necessarily overshadow everyone else's, but it just hit me more so than any other of the characters, right? That's why I love Tifa so much, right? Sure, she's attractive, sure, she's a great fighter, but the fact that her writing is just so tremendous, and just, I could gush all day long about Tifa's writing, but I'm not going to do that because we still have to move on to other things. But it is very exciting that Tifa's role is going to be more prominent, and honestly, I hope we do get the German suplex some people or some monsters, because that would be pretty cool, thing to give Tifa. It's a joke because someone asked about, like, Tifa's combat style and whether or not she'll be able to German suplex people. I mean, if Leon Kennedy can do it, so can Tifa, right? But yeah, like, I cannot wait for part 3. It's going to be so Tifa heavy, so much Tifa goodness that's just going to be fantastic. So another thing that was mentioned during this event was, I believe it was Kitase who mentioned it, about Aerith's death, and how, like, there are a lot of people who are debating, because there are people who believe that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is like a multiverse, like there's different worlds where Aerith survived, I still personally will not take that idea away. I do think it's unlikely that it is that case, because the live stream itself isn't creating multiple worlds in the sense of like the multiverse, like something with Marvel, right? It's essentially trying to create memories, and from those memories the worlds are created, where it's like branches off from the main live stream, right, branch, before it goes back into it anyway. Once it's destroyed, it goes straight back. And to me, Sephiroth is trying to destroy each one of those small branches to eventually take over the larger branch. And I think that what they said was essentially almost confirming, like I said, it's like my thought and my belief about Aerith still being alive just keeps getting lower and lower with every single dev interview. Now, of course, they could be like, they could change their mind and they're not telling us the truth, but I think it's likely that Aerith is dead, because they mentioned again in this event that Aerith's death isn't something that they are willing to change, and like they're not willing to change a lot about the original game, right? They don't want to change too much because they have so much respect for the game, right? So much respect, and that they are trying to keep it as best as they could to the original intent and what the original game showcased. The only difference now is that they're able to enhance it in certain ways. I know there are a lot of people who are not necessarily too happy with the way Rebirth went about certain events, certain plot points, right? I have my own, things that I don't necessarily like, in terms of where they went in Rebirth, right? But I think them doing it this way, I think is, the right way to go about it, because they wanted to go take a different route with how they wanted to showcase the story. And I think that's, perfectly fine. I think in terms of like remakes, I think that's mostly the way you want to go about it, because if you try to keep it one-to-one, it becomes a less interesting game. I fully understand why people want it to be one-to-one, right? I fully do. I really, really do get it. But the original will always be there. You could buy the original on almost any freaking platform. You could even buy it on your phone, right? So it's like, I do prefer remakes to take their own little spin on the story, but keep some of the major plot points intact. And I think that's what they're doing with the remake project. I personally am fine with, right? I know other people disagree, and people will say that they don't necessarily like some of the choices they made, and that's perfectly fine. I fully understand that. And you have every right to have like those type of thoughts, right? Because everyone consumed Final Fantasy VII differently, and everyone can, disagree on certain things. That's perfectly fine. That, everyone has an opinion on things. I know there's a lot of people who have opinions on Aerith's death that they may not like, because the way they essentially did it is another thing that they brought up during the event, which was they wanted to change the perspective of that scene. Right? They wanted to change it to the perspective of Cloud himself, where he cannot handle loss. And that's why you see all that weird static, you see the live stream shenanigans going on during that scene, and why it looks like Cloud thinks that he saved Aerith, when everyone else, like the other party members, think the opposite, that Aerith died. It's because Cloud, and it showcases with his mom, with Zack, that he cannot accept loss really well, and they wanted to showcase what happens in the final sequence through that perspective, right? Essentially, Cloud becomes like this narrator who thinks one way when the rest of the party doesn't. I forgot what the word is called. Untrusted narrator. I know the word, I just can't think of it at the top of my head right now, so I apologize for that. But it's essentially where they're going with it, and I think, changing the perspective of that kind of loses the emotional value the death scene gave to a lot of people during the original game, because it was a much more shocker. But I think that's one of the main reasons, right? I think that's why they decided to change the perspective, because with the remake, most people who have played the OG knows what happens, right? They want something different to happen, right? Because they want, certain characters like Aerith to survive. And that will make the game different enough where, they can finally be happy. Because there's a lot of people who wanted Aerith to survive. Even back in the OG, they have constantly tried to find ways to get Aerith to survive what happens at the Capitol. But they wanted, and that was one of the major themes of Final Fantasy VII, is going through loss, right? And they decided to do it in a different way. Some people don't like Aerith's death scene because it didn't give you that same emotion, or that much stronger emotion where you felt something. Some people have, some people haven't. And to me personally, I felt a little bit emotional about the scene. Do I think it hit as much as the OG? No. I think the OG definitely hit it harder, simply just for the fact that it was surprising, right? It was a shocking thing that happened. Now, granted, I already knew it was going to happen, because while I never played the OG until a couple years ago, right? I think I played Remake first and then the OG, but I already knew, because it's like one of those major things that happens in the story. No, not in the story, but in the gaming sphere, where people will mention that in top 10, most shocking things in video games, and you will eventually be exposed to that if you do watch that kind of stuff, which I did when I was younger, right? So it's even though I knew it was happening, what it was going to happen, I still felt that emotion that they portrayed, because the music, the way Cloud spoke it during that scene in the OG really hit me hard. Rebirth hit me in a similar way, but not as emotional, right? Because I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was personally for me, so I can't really go into give you an exact reason why it felt a little off. But I think what Kitase said essentially is that they wanted to go a different route, a different perspective, and I think that's more of what I personally wanted with the remake, because again, like I mentioned before, remakes are great, but you don't necessarily need them to be 1-to-1. I understand there's this whole thing about keeping games and remakes 1-to-1 because it keeps the true value of the game. It's what people want, right? But remakes, if you have played the game before, you don't necessarily always want to play a 1-to-1 part of it. Now, again, this is just my own personal opinion, right? But you want to experience it in a way that could even bring out those same emotions you felt back in the original, and I think that's what they were trying to go for. Whether or not it worked is up to you, the player. I think it did work because it did give me a shock. It did give me some different type of feeling that was close to similar to what it was with the OG, but at the same time, it was different enough where maybe it didn't work necessarily as well, but it worked well enough where I'm not mad at the direction that they went. I don't disagree with the direction that they went, but I do think the execution was not so like completely well done. But what they wanted to do, I think what they wanted to do it in a different fashion, I think worked well. So I really like that part of Rebirth, and I do see why Kitase mentioned that this is what they wanted to do with that scene. So moving on, they also talk about how like part 3 is going to be so much, and this is gonna be a very cool aspect of part 3 is the Highwind, because it's like the Highwind is one of, and I'm not just talking about under the Highwind scene that myself and other fans want to see, but also we're going to be able to travel with the Highwind all over this beautiful world. I really hope they allow us to travel to many of the locations that we met in Rebirth. You know, don't just cut it off. Don't just cut it off to just, you know, the new locations, right? But let us go to like Junon. Let us go to Costa del Sol. You know, all this stuff with the Highwind, because you're able to use the Highwind and travel almost everywhere now. I think part 3 is going to have like a much bigger world map. It's going to be so much fun to be essentially use the Highwind to travel all around the world, and they constantly praise the Highwind is going to be not praise, but mention that the Highwind is going to be a very, very crucial part of part 3. And they even gave us an update on it, which was that the Highwind is going really well. Like the things they wanted to do, the way they're programming the Highwind is at a very, very high level right now, meaning that it's very close to completion, and they're very happy to where it is, which means that's fantastic. It means that originally they had, you know, struggled with it. You know, they were trying to figure out how to handle it, but now it seems like they figured some things out, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great, according to them. So I'm really excited for that. But the Highwind is going to be so much fun. It's going to be such a blast to go all these new areas, like, you know, Rocket Town, like Wutai. You know, it's going to be, I cannot wait to ride on the Highwind. It's going to be so much goddamn fun. But there are also going to be other things that I do want to experience in part 3, such as the submarine. Hopefully the submarine also works similar to like the Highwind, where like you'll be able to travel with the submarine through like the sea. Because in Rebirth, you know, you do, you know, go on the tiny Bronco, and then you're able to travel like most of the sea. Me and my ADHD brain didn't like the fog at all with the world map, and I spent like 20 minutes in one of my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth streams just going all over the place, just trying to clear the fog from the map, because I just my brain just didn't like seeing that, so I wanted to clear it out as much as possible. But hopefully it's something like that, where we still be able to use the submarine underwater and go to many different places as well. Like use the Highwind and the submarine as two separate modes of transportation in part 3. That's going to be so much fun to experience. And I think that's going to be one of the big key things in part 3. And, you know, that is that travel. You know, similar to like what was it, Final Fantasy 12, right? Where you with some of the characters are sky pirates, right? If they could make something like that, where they're able to use the Highwind like that, that's gonna be so much fun. It's just going to these different locations with the Highwind, and you know, maybe even having battles like in the battle in Final Fantasy X before they go to stop Yuno's wedding. Like, goddamn, have a fight like that against a goddamn weapon. Like having a weapon fight on goddamn the Highwind. Oh my goodness gracious, that would be so much fun. So that's why I'm super excited about the Highwind and just being able to just fly around the Highwind in part 3. It's going to be so much goddamn fun. You know, I can't. Part 3 is gonna be so much fun. Like they even mentioned it during the event that it's gonna be such a blast, that it's gonna be one of the greatest experiences anyone playing video games will ever have. So I cannot wait for it. Now, granted, everyone's gonna experience it differently. Some people may not like the direction that they go, which is, you know, I can't really argue with opinions that you know, people dislike certain things, right? We could argue back and forth, but at the end of the day, people have their own opinions. It's usually whenever you try to you know, try to make it as a fact without ever, you know, acknowledging it as an opinion, where it gets a little iffy about it, right? But so much fun stuff. So much fun stuff could happen in part 3 that I cannot wait. Although all my favorite sequences of the OG Final Fantasy VII happen in part 3. Especially with, now we're going to have Vincent and Sid as part of the team, the synergies, and apparently they're going to add a new type of, like, way to battle in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Oh my god, it's gonna be so much fun. And I'm also interested how they're gonna deal with, you know, Zack is in the live stream, how they're gonna deal or add more things with Aerith, because I know Aerith is not just going to appear at the end. I think she will have added scenes. Maybe you could have stuff like, you know, her trying to reach Zack and then trying to, you know, hold off Sephiroth in the live stream together. That could be something fun. I think that would be something cool to do. Kind of like how they do like the Zack missions in Rebirth. You could do something like that, but this time with Aerith and Zack. So that could be something cool too. So part 3 is just going to be so much fun. Oh my goodness gracious. And I think one of the things they did say that really got me really excited and just kind of like gave me, what's the word I'm looking for? It made me excited because a lot of things that I thought about over the past couple of months and how they want to enhance like the original story just makes me excited for what they will do. Like, they kept praising Tifa and how much Tifa's role in part 3 is going to be, which I'm super excited for, the Highwind stuff. It just overall is just going to be such a fun it just sounds like it's going to be a fun game to experience. I don't know when it comes out. I'm going to assume 2017 because it'll be like the 30th anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, right? So it's going to be a long way. It sucks. Hopefully we see something at maybe the Game Awards later this year, like maybe a teaser to like whatever the third game title is going to be called, you know. Losing my voice a little bit. But like, I really cannot wait for this game. It's going to be so much fun. And this event where they told us a lot of stuff about it, oh my god, I cannot possibly wait. I just really cannot. I'm sure there's other things that they talked about that I'm not remembering during the recording of this video. So let me know if there's anything I missed that you may want to know more, or you know, want to hear more or express my opinion about. Let me know in the comments below and I'll gladly have a discussion about it. And just overall, I cannot wait for this. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be such a blast, and I cannot wait for part 3 whenever it comes out. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoy it, and please read Traits of Two Paths. I'm begging you, please read it. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.